I picked up this paper, it's a long one. Overpowering parents are a gift to learn to stand for our own something and to learn to negotiate the bitterness in a sweet manner. This has been one of the main issues of my life. Of course, it resonates with me, but this came out, I suppose, at a moment that I start to be grateful to my very overpowering and dominating mother. And when the time passed, I realized her domination doesn't just come because she's strong, but it comes from the fears. When we have overpowering and dominating parents, I understand it as they ask us to be better than them. They ask us to be the best that we can. They can easily see the potential of what we have or who we are. And this generally has an opposite impact on the children, which comes out as a quite a scared child, or when it grows out quite a unassured, low self-esteem of going and doing things and getting things done, because the feeling of never being enough and never be able to achieve, or never be able to please the parent, never be able to make it in a way that it's worthy, just stays for a long time until I sit down and decided to have a look at it in a deeper manner and from a different angle. So it's not just rebelling against my mother. I'm talking about my mother because my father passed away when I was 2.5 years old. So what I have is my super strong looking, very ambitious, very energetic mother who constantly criticized me for nearly everything that I have and I've done, for my behaviors, for my physical appearance, for the clothes choice, for my grades, my education, my partner choice, my boyfriend choice. It's a constant criticism and constant feeling of like I'm not achieving and not doing anything right. When I was a manager of a unit of 4 to 5, at the age of 24, 25, I just wasn't enough. I remember that just bringing all these presents from the factory. It was a textile factory, and just remember just not being able to feed her appetite of success. And that time I decided that I had to leave her physically, so leave her voice out of my life. So by physically moving away from her, then I moved to England and made a really bad, on the outskirts, really bad marriage with a quite included domestic abuse and all sorts of things, which was in itself a really teaching thing. But it showed me where I stood mentally. I just thought, just bringing all these overpowering parent issues into my marriage, and I didn't think I was worthy of myself to stand up to what I believed was right. But now what I'm thinking is, instead of thinking this, not being able to satisfy somebody, a better way of seeing it is an opportunity to stand up fully for who I believe that I am, to stand up fully with all the mistakes and faults apparently for other people, which please go and check my first episode about fault, my opinions about fault, and wholly stand on the belief of who I am and create and become my own ethics through understanding and analyzing my personality and my principles in life. And my principles or my working way, my learning way could be very different than the other people's. And it's completely different opinion. We all do things in different way, and we are here in this life not to succeed in the way that our parents want us to succeed, but in the way that we feel we achieve something. And these can be really small achievements. Small achievements such as learning to tie your shoelaces. I believe it's sort of a decision to which direction to go or which problem to solve. I'm saying it's a problem because we're born without any problems, but the world is a problem, it's a puzzle. We try to make the picture without knowing what the picture is. So we're putting little puzzle pieces into places, and then there are people around us who has been on this wrong for longer than we are giving their opinion, and some of them insist on their opinion and their path is the best path, and that could be our parents. And this is a time to learn how to negotiate with the world through a personality who's really strong and who's really next to us. And it's time to negotiate this bitter feeling in a very sweet manner and understand how the sweetness has a power. But the whole picture or different parts of this puzzle has different look. It's a different picture, it's a different color, it's a different shape of a puzzle piece. And it's pretty useless to blame her for her behaviors, because in time, maybe 30 years later from now, our parents might recognize that how much impact they have on us. We're all moving in the torrent of time, and we're passing through landscapes, and we see, we observe, we internalize, and then we adopt, because the current is different, the speed is different, the density feels different, the obstacles in it is different. But in time, each of us may decide to work on something different than the others are working on. Some friends decide to work on their career, and that was the goal. And the goal was the making decent amount of money, buying a house when they were at early 20s or mid 30s, whenever they decide to have some children, and do this all prosecco ladies or do this all Iron Man thing, and they devoted their life in those kind of patterns to achieving them. And they are big achievements when you are not a person who's achieved those. That we only have so much time, and we have so many different subjects to work on in this lifetime. And some people decide to work on their emotional well-being if they realize that they were born into a grief family, a family of grief, always a kind of a pain in there, and always kind of a misery. And somehow, some families have that heaviness, and then that could affect the child. I mean, not everybody is the same, but one of them might have get affected really deep, and that was me, by the way. I was born into a house of grief. My father died really young, and all I remember about for such a long time, all I remembered about my family life was cries and grief. It never left us. It's still like I can still hear that grief and the resentment and bitterness in my mum's voice, and it just made all my hairs go erected. and I'm in a defense mode. I just want to leave that environment. It's not me. That person, my mom, is not me, and that is her grief. And it took me a long time to understand where my misery comes from, where my despair and grief comes from. I still have it in me, not as much as used to, but that my decision was try to understand where that unhappiness comes from, and why I have been in such emotional pain, and break that free and come into a place of peace in myself, and peace about myself and about my life. When I come to that place about accepting myself and accepting that my behavioral patterns are different than the others, and I don't have to be achieving the highest stakes in my first go, and I can do it step by step in my own pace, but consistently, and on the subject, on the thing that it's dear to my heart. It gave me the peace that I've been seeking for, because I'm not working for anybody else's, under anybody else's whip, and I'm taking all the burdens that if I had to take, maybe one day I will realize that I don't have to need to take any burdens. Maybe I will realize that it's just such a flow, and I can just fly easily. Maybe I have the wings that's going to take me. But until so far, I'm in peace, and I'm scratching. Maybe I don't need to scratch the walls, but this is all I am doing right now. What works for me is to experiment and experience it by putting my foot in the wrong manner to feel how it feels, on which muscles that I'll be using. With the overpowering parents, you can be driven to something that you don't want to be driven to. But if you're a bit aware of that you don't want to be driven to that direction, you can get lost. That being lost feeling can be quite emotionally disturbing. Then it will cause friction with your parents, of course, but friction with your partner, friction with your children, because that's the only thing you've known so far. You have an idea about what kind of life you need to have because that's what you've been told, and you are so frustrated because you don't have that kind of life. And then you get angry when a plate is broken in the house. You get so angry and furious, and you start shouting at your partner who's been working for 8 hours a day to provide a bit of a happiness, to provide some money at home. Maybe your partner is absolutely in the wrong, but maybe not. Maybe the wrongness is just the frustration coming from not being able to fit into the idea that your parents has imposed to you. Maybe all that frustration is because you think that you have to have that house, you had to be working under a title, but you're not. Maybe that's all the frustration is about. Maybe you wanted to have the day to be sunny and it's rainy, and maybe your parent is so afraid and they had so many regrets about their own lives that they're scared that you are going to make that kind of regrets as well. Maybe your parents are dickheads. It's just a possibility. But the effect of it is there's a chance you are going to be insecure in yourself, but you're going to put it out as if you are too secure with yourself because you have something to prove. You have that thing to prove which doesn't go away. You just never prove it. You just never prove it enough. Isn't it a great opportunity to analyze yourself and accept that you are wanting to go on your own path? When I sit down and when I was going through all my turmoils and sat down and said, look, to myself, it was just she was so scared. It's I am constantly trying to prove that I'm good enough to everybody. Try to prove that I'm clever. Try to prove that I do the best. Try to prove that I understand things. It's just not really good. Try to prove that I know the life that I should be living. But by trying to prove it, I don't really know. I don't really go inside. I don't really look around, and I don't really analyze myself. Is it really what I want to do? Is this something that I like to be engaging my life? Is there somebody that I like to be engaging my life another 30 years?